WVEC TV, Hampton.
Here we go.
This is Jim Kincaid, ABC News.
The following is a presentation of 13 News.
As the first women in Navy history to go to sea as ordinary sailors, these seamen are a media event. Even the Navy is taking pictures and has hired an advertising agency to make a recruiting film about women at sea. The women smile for the camera as they work.
But what the tourist, and indeed even many of the 250,000 people who live in this city don't see is this. This is Seatack. Located just a few miles from the high-rise hotels, the oceanfront homes, and the Strip, stands a small community whose setting seems to remind you of rural Georgia. It is a place where time seems to have sidestepped. If a name could change a place, this is proof positive that the metamorphosis has not yet taken place. Here in the midst of the growing of better educational opportunities and wealth stands the city's worst slum, looking much like it could have 100 years ago. Only today there are some modern conveniences, but they stand a lonely sentry rusting away in the front lawns of Seatack. This is the other Virginia Beach.
Good evening. I'm Jane Gardner.
I'm Jim Kincaid.
And I'm John Miller. We'll have those stories and more as Focus continues.
Focus is brought to you in part by the Daily Press and Times Herald, serving the peninsula and other great communities.
A 40-year-old repair ship named the USS Vulcan could be the most famous Navy ship since the Monitor and the Merrimack fought it out at Hampton Roads over 100 years ago. What the Vulcan is famous for is women. Its crew includes the first enlisted women in Navy history to serve on other than hospital or transport ships. Other Navy ships have women aboard now, but the Vulcan was the first. So we took a little cruise on it to assess this woman's Navy.
Are you one of the sailors?
That's right.
I love your boat.
The women aboard what's been called the Navy's Love Boat are a little less enthusiastic than the passengers on the TV series. As the USS Vulcan headed home from its first real sea duty with a coeducational crew, the women sailors were learning the ropes. One thing the 58 women on board discovered on the trip to and from Earl, New Jersey, shipboard life is not easy.
These lines weigh more than I do.
With heavy lines and a bitter wind blowing across the bow, just casting off took skill, and there was more underfoot than ropes. As the first women in Navy history to go to sea as ordinary sailors, these seamen are a media event. Even the Navy is taking pictures and has hired an advertising agency to make a recruiting film about women at sea. The women smile for the camera as they work.
All ahead 1/3.
All engines ahead, 1/3. Very well. All engines ahead, 1/3, sir.
Thanks to Captain Harry Spencer's careful maneuvering, the Vulcan gets safely out of the channel and into the open sea. It'll take 26 hours to get home to Norfolk.
The whole time the Vulcan's at sea, this luxurious room featuring 2 blankets, automatic climate control, is home for an officer or visiting media type. Listen, this room is luxurious compared to where the enlisted women sleep downstairs.
Here, the women literally climb over each other. All their worldly goods are under their beds. Sometimes there's no hot water, sometimes there's no heat, and always there's no privacy. Not only are you surrounded by the 55 other enlisted women, but even your bedroom isn't safe from the roving camera.
I always wanted to see how the guys lived out at sea, and they told me before I came on this ship that you're going to have this much space, and It's very confining, and you know, you want to just spread out sometimes. You know, your rack is only this big, and you don't want to spread out that much, and you can't do it. So it took a while for me to adjust, because it was like living out of a suitcase. But once you get organized, it's pretty neat sometimes.
Meg Waylock slept through the photographer's visit because she'd just gotten off watch. But sometimes the constant scrutiny is an intrusion.
Believe it or not, I try to hide sometimes. And because it is nerve-wracking when you're trying to do a job. Like when I was up there trying to learn something new, I didn't know whether I should ask a question for the guy that I was being taught how to look starboard lookout.
How often do we have to look?
Huh?
How often do we have to look?
Make a scan across, take them down, look out there with your eyes, then start it over again. You try to look through them all the time with just binoculars. When you get off watch, you won't be able to see anything.
The women sailors have to learn how to handle sea duty because the Vulcan, a repair ship which hasn't been on an extended sea cruise in more than 12 years, will soon be spending 6 months in the Mediterranean.
I just think about the Med cruise.
I can't
That'd be good.
Italy and Spain, and that's where I wanted to go.
I'm gonna go to Rhoda. I got a girlfriend out there.
The old ship has had to change some since the women came aboard in November. The biggest area of change? Attitude. Back then, even Captain Spencer wasn't sure the new Navy was ready for this invasion.
I was not sure how the thing would play out when we first started, and that start was back in June of this year when I was first told that this ship would be one of the ships to receive women. I was still concerned at some point, I think, when women first came aboard, but in just 4 short months or 5 short months here, I've been real pleased with what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a group of young people that are moving aboard this ship that are really trying to do their job and take their place alongside the men that have gone before them and are working with them right now and doing the job, and there's no doubt in my mind they're doing it just as well as any of the men I have aboard.
Some of the men disagree.
It's a lot different than being on another ship. The ways aren't expected to do what the men do, and a lot of times they don't because they're not forced to. A lot of times they won't force them to do the same work, or, like I said before, what's expected of us to do, you know, expected of us. And if they were on another ship, a different ship, as, you know, the guys, they'd be expected to do the job, and, you know, there wouldn't be any hassles with, as far as, you know, them expected not to be put on report for doing something, or, you know, not staying late and for this and that. Just like they do to someone else, put a guy on report for not doing something, coming in late, not, you know, stuff like that, but they're a little lax on women.
Are the women pulling their own weight? Depends on who you ask. Dental assistant Bonnie McKelvey.
I think I do. I think I do exactly what I'm expected to do, no more, no less.
I don't feel that I have to prove, that I should have to prove that I can, that I have to do as much as the men in the means of weights, lifting weights and all that heavy machinery.
Whether or not they are doing as much as the men, they are not the same as the men, and there's still a feeling that the Vulcan has gone from repair ship to love boat.
Well, I'll tell you, this would be a nice thing. Take this ship to Hollywood, get everybody to be a star, make a TV series about this ship. It's not like any other ship.
That cliche notwithstanding, on a ship where there's little space to be alone, there's no space to be in love. Well, almost. Mess cook Catherine Smith proves the exception to that rule. She's engaged to marry electronics technician Robert Bays. The ship's reaction to the relationship keeps them from spending much time together.
Okay, at first it was something of an excitement with everybody. It's something that's never happened before. We've received minor trouble of people adjusting to it. It's nothing that really causes very much worry. At times it was worry, at the time it was.
Like what?
Okay, we've had times in which they were mainly scared that we were going to make a bad name for the ship, that we were going to do things like fraternization. That's a big thing that's a worry for the ship. They were scared that we were going to get into that, and it was a big hassle trying to keep from even letting the ship even think that we were fraternizing. You just about have to stay totally away. It means no touching, even practically at all.
Once you are married, how do you feel about the idea of him going off to sea with all those other women?
I don't mind. I know what goes on the ship. And there's nothing between guys and girls, really. With Bob and I, we don't touch. And it's too big a risk, too, because if you get caught doing it, it's a big fine, and restriction and everything. And I trust Bob enough not to worry about it. I know there was one article in the paper in the Navy Times called Ban the Broads, and I do not think that lady trusted her husband at all. And she has no idea what goes on ships at all. Because I think most of the other girls on the ship could tell you there's just no room for it, no place for it.
Catherine thinks she's being kept on a mess cook assignment, one of the least favorite jobs on board, as punishment for getting involved with Bob. The problem with all the publicity about the women on the Vulcan is that everything that happens has to be explained to the reporters hovering about. 4 sailors won't be going to the Mediterranean because they're going to have babies. All the Navy hastens to add are married. The Navy brass wanted this coverage to show the taxpayers, Captain Spencer says, that the program is working. The enlisted men didn't ask to live on camera, but they do as they're told, patiently following the director's instructions.
Okay, can I get you in here too? Yeah. And we got a couple more women that we can get in there.
Of course, our camera's intruding too. It's a great story, women at sea, a direct contradiction to all Navy tradition. But what for us is news has become, for many of the women and men aboard the Vulcan, a real drag.
I didn't know I was going to have all this. I'm going to put some makeup on this week. One of the days this week.
At night, the Vulcan takes on aspects of a women's dorm, with the co-eds in uniform. But the next morning, it's back on deck.
It's a nice day at sea. That means the Vulcan's making about 12 knots and gently swaying the whole time. On the first cruise, most of the women were a little seasick. But then, most every sailor, the first time he or she goes out, is a little queasy.
The cure for seasickness? Work.
Hit it! Hit it! Hit it! Hit it!
Everybody mans the ropes for the docking maneuver. Or is it persons the ropes? Vocabulary was one of the big problems discussed at length in early news stories about women at sea. In most cases, tradition won, a kind of comforting holdover in a rapidly changing Navy. The cruise from New Jersey is almost complete, a flawless exercise, when, suddenly, the Vulcan scrapes another ship in Norfolk's docks. A life raft falls overboard. The other ship orders onlookers away from the scene. There are no such orders aboard the Vulcan. Captain Spencer had said he wanted the media to get a clear picture. We did. Even checked the bridge. A man was driving. Little harm done, we inch closer and closer to home and the families waiting on shore. The Vulcan's decks fill with sailors planning their liberties or congratulating themselves.
Go home and say, we made it back in one piece, Dad, we didn't sink.
So the experiment dissolves into reunion as the women come home from the sea.
When you mention Virginia Beach, most people think of the ocean and the resort strip. Lifetime residents may be reminded of that genteel life in the North End or Bird Neck or Bay Colony, just to mention a few places. To many, Virginia Beach stands for the good life, an affluent society, rich in leisure time activities. But there's another side. To many, Virginia Beach is just the opposite. As hard as it is to believe, there are many residents of the city without running water and indoor plumbing. This is the other Virginia Beach. The Virginia Beach Oceanfront, billed as the world's largest resort city, it is a mecca for vacationers and many of the area's rich. An address along the North End is a symbol that one has arrived. And while the middle class works endlessly to grow a rich green lawn, here status is no lawn at all. The more sand, the better. Houses here run into the hundreds of thousands of dollars, truly the achievement of the American dream. Per capita income in Virginia Beach is the highest in South Hampton Roads, more than $6,200. Second in all of Tidewater to Williamsburg. Only 3 other cities in the country are growing faster than the beach. Tourists who come to the oceanfront see a city that works and affluence. And to some, they see a place that, no matter what the weather, there's always a place in the sun. But what the tourist, and indeed even many of the 250,000 people who live in the city don't see is this. This is Seatack. Located just a few miles from the high-rise hotels, the oceanfront homes, and the Strip, stands a small community whose setting seems to remind you of rural Georgia. It is a place where time seems to have sidestepped. If a name could change a place, this is proof positive that the metamorphosis has not yet taken place. Here in the midst of the growing of better educational opportunities and wealth stands the city's worst slum, looking much like it could have 100 years ago. Only today there are some modern conveniences, but they stand a lonely sentry rusting away in the front lawns of Seatack. This is the other Virginia Beach. If you look past the mud, you'll see Brooklyn Street. It's a dirt road with holes deep enough they seem to swallow tires and spit them back out. And down at the end of this street stands a small home, 4 rooms, about 500 square feet of living space. Outside, you'll find Nelson Gregory. He likes to be called Roy. Every day, this 75-year-old man spends a few hours cutting up trees that grow on the 4 acres of land he and his sister owns. Because if he didn't cut the lumber, he and his 73-year-old sister would freeze. This old wood-burning stove is one of the 2 Gregorys have. It keeps them warm, also helps with the cooking. Oh, they have electricity, had it for several years, but the wood, despite the work, is cheaper. Annie Gregory says she can't play the piano, but she can pound it. She's lived on these 4 acres all of her life. She's worked hard, too, as a maid in some of the finest houses on the North End. She spent that money to fix up her house the best she can, and it's paid off. This is one of the nicest homes in Seatack, but to Annie Gregory, it's not nice enough.
I'd like to have nice living quarters to live in.
Like everybody else.
Yeah. Would you like to live like I'm living now?
No.
Tell the truth. You wouldn't like it.
No.
But you see, well, that's what I'm talking about. Even your living room is nicer fixed up than my living room is in here. This is fixed up pretty good. But yours is better. And don't you think I want one nicer?
But you like this house.
Yes, but I want it fixed like I want it. If I get, you got one you gonna give me, or you got one that I can get a little better? If you got one I can take better, I think I got enough property around here to put it anywhere you want to put it at. Anywhere I want to put it.
And indeed, she does have the land, much of it now piled with mounds of dirt. The city was putting in sewers a few miles up the road, so Annie Gregory asked and received the earth, hoping to build up low-lying areas around her house. The city has promised to level the mounds, but so far, they haven't gotten around to it. Something else they haven't gotten around to yet on Brooklyn Street, installing sewers. In a city as rich as Virginia Beach, many residents in Seatack have no indoor plumbing. She has a toilet and a bathtub. They're now housed in a shack behind her house, awaiting water and sewer, and an addition to the Gregory home to hold them.
People who live in Virginia Beach on the oceanfront and drive down the expressway to Norfolk every day may pass this place 100, 200 times a year. Do they realize that you are living here or that people are living here like you're living?
No, not everybody. No, because you take these people where I worked for so long. They came to my house when I hurt my leg, and they didn't know that I live here. They didn't know that I didn't have no bath. They thought I had a bath in the house. There's some people here on the beach don't know how other people are living.
What are you going to do when you put your addition on and put your bathroom in?
thank the Lord and live happily, and thank you if you help me.
How's it going to feel to take a bath in your own bathtub for the first time in 73 years?
Oh, it would be, I just said, when I get in the tub and let the water run in, I said, thank you, Jesus, they helped me out. Because I'm used to bathtubs, but not in this house, you know what I mean? I know what they are. It would be a blessing if I could get some of that money you three sitting down on and help me to put that bath on and that on this house here. I'd come up there and preach y'all a sermon in that studio. Or either sing you a song.
For Annie Gregory, and indeed all of the residents, the question is, why have they had to wait so long? Garbage pickups are a fairly recent thing, so is electricity. Some of the people here have phones, some television, but what many of us take for granted, running water and indoor plumbing, is still a dream, a luxury for some of the people in Virginia Beach. Help is on the way. In '74, Congress passed the Community Development Block Grant Program designed specifically to help areas like Seatack. But part of the money is supposed to go to build low-income housing. And despite the living conditions in some of these homes, residents would rather live here than in a project.
I think each person, if they're able, they should own their own home. Yes, I don't think I should rent your home and pay you money out and I can have one of my own and live just as good as you can, and you living off of me. And I think I should be able to have my own home and live in it and enjoy it just like you.
What's going to happen to the Annie Gregorys of Seatack? Water and sewer will help improve their lives. Probably not as much as this book Annie Gregory reads every day, but it will be a step into the 20th century. Someday the road to her home may even be paved, but the $209 she receives each month from Social Security will keep the Annie Gregorys of Seatack from ever realizing the potential of the beach. And in the back of her mind, she'll always remember the homes in the North End.
I know I won't be able to live like them, but I would like to have my place where I do live decent and a nice place to live. I don't want to get out on the beach. I'm satisfied down here where I am. But if I can get this place all landscaped and ditches and things all dreamed out and nice streets and lights and things like that, it would be much better than living like I'm living now. So I would like to have some of that luxury that they got down here, back up here. All of us around here would love some of that.
If you could change one thing, what would you change?
I'd fix it so all of the poor people that needs homes and good living condition, I'd say give it to them.
There was another public opinion poll the other day, one taken by the Associated Press and NBC, and it was aimed at finding out what Americans believe and are doing about the energy crisis. One of the findings in the poll was interesting, but probably won't come as any great big surprise, except to a few politicians and public relations men. Over 2/3 of the American people, says this poll, don't really believe there's an energy crisis. They believe instead that the whole uncomfortable mess is an elaborate scheme to convince us there is an energy crisis and that the only way to solve it is to dig deeper into the American consumer's pocket again. Another thing the poll found out was that 1/5, roughly, of those polled are not doing anything at all to save energy. And that, by the way, says something about our tolerance. 2/3 of us don't believe there's a problem, but 2 out of 3 of us are trying to help anyway. We're a very patient people, but apparently we're a very suspicious people at this point in our history, and the reasons why deserve a little exploring. You suppose 1974 could have anything to do with it? We sat in long gas lines, we turned our thermostats down in winter and up in summer. We grumbled, but we paid higher prices for almost everything we require in our daily lives, and we accepted less at the pay table in order to help in that battle against inflation. And then we found out that the companies that convinced government to ask us to do all these things had just turned the greatest windfall profits in their modern history. Then just lately we ran across another set of facts that just didn't seem to add up. There was this company that sells gasoline that was one of the first to weigh in after the Iranian oil crisis with the bad news that there would be less gasoline coming to its dealers, 20% less fuel for airlines. Then we found out that this company, Texaco, only imported 0.5% of its oil from Iran. But perhaps the most maddening thing of all is the announcement that keeps getting wider and wider play in Washington and in state houses the length and breadth of the land. It goes invariably something like this. We're so terribly short of oil that we're just not going to have enough to run our cars, heat our homes, provide light and power. Folks, we're just in a terribly short energy situation. However, if you'll let us take all the price controls off and allow oil and utility companies to charge what the market will bear, we'll come up with something. We always do. It's called the law of supply and demand. It's also called extortion in some circles. There's an old American saying that should be framed and hung on every government office wall and every corporate boardroom. It goes like this: fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I'm Jim Kincaid.
Focus is brought to you in part by the Daily Press and Times-Herald, serving the peninsula and other great communities.
I'm John Miller.
I'm Jim Kincaid.
And I'm Jane Gardner. We'll be back next week with another edition of Focus.